Welcome to Every Horror Movie on Netflix, the show where we watch, review, and discuss every horror movie on Netflix. Back again with you this week. It's me, Chris, here with Patrick.
Hi.
And Steven.
Hello.
This week, we're going to the abandoned landscapes of the Ukraine and going to write in our diary.
We're going to do some urban exploration, guys.
I'm talking about the Chernobyl Diary. We watched Chernobyl Diaries this week.
How's your face after that movie?
Pins and needles, baby. Pins and needles.
Yeah, I'm feeling a burning sensation.
All right, so this is our last film that we're going to be reviewing this year, bringing 2018 to close with a bang, so to speak.
I would say a whimper, but we'll get into it. Are there any diaries in this movie?
No.
Okay,
no.
I didn't think so.
Video diaries, perhaps.
Very brief video diaries.
iPad diaries.
I thought this, to my relief, this was not a found footage film. There's some found footage in it, but...
Yeah, there was a sinking moment where there's a few moments of cell phone footage at the beginning of this where, well, we all watched this one together, which is unusual for us.
We watched it as a family.
Yeah,
Very unusual for us.
I love it when we do that.
The dog was there. It was great. Mom made meatloaf.
Yep, we watched it in complete silence as to not break our embargo, because we save our good shit for you.
Well, we tried our best. There may have been a few comments here and there.
But yeah, in that opening moment, I think all three of us were like, oh, fuck, found footage. It is found footage. Or maybe that was just me and Steven. I forget.
Oh, I don't have a problem with found footage, but...
I don't either necessarily. I've definitely seen some good examples of found footage, but
Tell me.
More often than not, found footage is going to be fucking bullshit. Paranormal Activity is still one of the scariest fucking movies I've ever seen.
That was scary?
Scary as fuck, dude.
Wow.
I haven't seen it. I'd love to break the tie on
That
this,
movie fucked my head for months. I would sit in bed, I would wake up in the middle of the night, and I'd be afraid that fucking demon was coming up the stairs of my apartment.
Did you position a high 8 video camera on a tripod next to your bed?
I should have. That's a great idea.
Guys, I'm afraid, for a while, I was tired all the time. I was like, do I have sleep apnea or something? Am I getting a good night's sleep? And, I take video. I have cameras and stuff. I was like, well, I just record myself time lapse of me sleeping. And I was like, I might see something I don't want to see. I might see something I'll never sleep again.
So you didn't do it.
10.
So I didn't do it.
Never sleep again.
I didn't do it. But this movie is actually from is it the director or a producer or?
It is one of the writers of this movie is the director of the original Paranormal Activity.
Okay, did he produce it at all?
Yeah, I think he co-produced Chernobyl.
So it's got some found footage DNA in it, and it opens with found footage that turns out to be just a video diary that the characters are looking at on their iPad. But it's not a found footage movie. So that's good.
Although occasionally the way the camera moves, it might as well be.
It might as well be.
In the early scenes, it does feel like it.
I'm even thinking of some later scenes, actually, in the way that the camera will just whip around. I'm thinking of one particular scene where there's sort of a creepy figure in the distance that the people are looking at. Then they're distracted by something else behind them. They run after the thing behind them, and the camera whips around to check the thing in the distance before it follows after them again. It feels very much like there's an actual person, like one of the characters, who is, doing these whip pans, trying to figure out what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, there's no artistry to the camera work in the movie. It feels like it could be found footage. It's just not that jerky.
It's too well lit, but I get what you mean.
But it's mostly natural lighting, it seems. There's parts where it's obviously not natural lighting, but low production values.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, apparently this movie was made for an estimated $1 million. Does that feel about right?
Is that what you read?
That's what I read. Though I feel like the default estimate for IMDb is $1 million. It doesn't go any lower than that.
Well, you can stretch your money in Serbia, I guess, which is where we found out this was shot largely.
In Hungary, yeah.
So that was surprising to me because we're not used to seeing American movies that are actually shot on location in Europe.
So, we should briefly just describe what the fuck this movie is about.
Yeah, I
think before we get to the location. Just very briefly, it's about a group of American kids who are on a European holiday, and they meet a family member and friend to them in Kiev who ends up talking them into taking a side day trip to go visit Chernobyl.
Extreme tourism.
Extreme tourism, yeah. So they go out there with this old, like, ex-military Russian dude named Yuri.
Oh, yeah.
Who is definitely the MVP of this movie, let's be real.
He's the J of this movie, I think.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
And, so shit just kind of goes haywire eventually while they're out there.
I mean, the movie's called just Chernobyl Diaries, so you can use your imagination, I guess, on what's going to happen. The central, like, conceit of the premise is very similar to Bleed, that movie we watched.
Bleed.
You kind of got some friends hanging out. They're having a good time. They're having dinner, and one of them is like, "Hey, bro, want to get wild? Let's go to this forbidden place. Nothing bad will happen, I promise."
Want to get nuts?
So yeah, they get with Yuri. They go into the exclusion zone of Pripyat, Ukraine. Did I pronounce that right? I think so.
Close enough, yeah.
Close enough, which is the town
surrounding in fact,
the Chernobyl plant.
The title is sort of misleading because most of the running time is spent in Pripyat, or however you pronounce the city.
I think,
the
again,
neighboring city.
I was lamenting before that I know a lot about Chernobyl, but I don't know quite enough to talk about it with total authority on this show. But I think Chernobyl is the name of the plant, not a city.
Oh, so the area that was actually decimated by the meltdown
is largely Pripyat or whatever.
Right.
And the Pripyat Diaries just doesn't have the same ring to it.
Yeah,
I've never, and everyone knows of the Chernobyl disaster as a Chernobyl disaster.
Right.
If you're listening to us and you're 13 years old and you don't know what the Chernobyl disaster was, it was basically a nuclear power plant meltdown in Eastern Europe that contaminated a large area and created the forced evacuation of a semi-large populated area.
Also, 13-year-old audience, thank you very much for your attentive listenership to your elders here.
Right. And I've actually, so my main information on Chernobyl comes from Wikipedia and from a blog that used to be fairly popular. I forget what it's called, but the blog was a woman recounting like what was presented as a like solo motorcycle journey through the exclusion zone with lots of pictures and photos.
That was the inspiration for this movie, apparently.
Oh, was it?
According to IMDb, yes.
It is a very vivid and compelling account of what Chernobyl is like today. I've read some things that suggest that it may be embellished a little bit. I've read some things that say, all right, this woman was not like on a motorcycle by herself going through the wilderness, stuff like that. But I think there is a lot of legitimate information to be had there. And the radiation levels, if you take your iodine and you stay on the pavement because biological things absorb the radiation more than like the pavement, you can go in there for a day or two. That was a tangent, but I hope you learned something.
Yuri tells them that they can spend about 2 hours without having to worry about the effects of radiation.
I don't know if any of that's true.
Yeah, probably not.
They should have taken some iodine pills, and we did not see that. But this movie is not concerned about the science of radiation exposure.
Yeah, I mean, we have moments where a Geiger counter is pulled up, and they're like, the radiation is spiking.
Right.
It's very comic booky, that moment.
Right. Yeah. It's getting worse. It's getting higher.
Yeah. The gamma rays. No, I mean, the one of the few things this movie has going for it, in my estimation, is the location. I mean, creepy idea going into Chernobyl. I assume people generally aren't able to go into Chernobyl. It looks really cool. We all wondered while we were watching it if it was actually filmed in Chernobyl. We ended up finding out, no, it's filmed in Serbia and Hungary, but it still has a really creepy vibe, and the location itself is really cool and spooky. I mean, that basic setup, the first half hour or so, was solid to me.
Absolutely. First half hour, I love the first half hour, and the locations are great. They really elevate the movie even before they get to Chernobyl, which is what I was about to say before. Like even seeing the video diaries where it's like, oh wow, this production went across Europe, and shooting just kind of the backstory of the characters. That's impressive because you don't see that a lot on these small budget Netflix movies.
Yeah, they should have taken the time to actually write compelling characters if they were going to dig into the backstory. But
right. Well, it's not really digging into the backstory as much as just framing that we got some Americans going across Europe. But that was actually shot in Europe. Blew my mind. I saw Chernobyl Diaries just on the Netflix catalog, and I assumed, jaded by Netflix that I am, that it was going to be like the fields of Georgia or something. Or they were going to go to some place in the wintertime that looked dead and pretend it was Chernobyl. But no.
As opposed to having like a location with these actual like bombed out desolate buildings. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. As opposed to having like, like we all thought it may be in Chernobyl because it looks just like Chernobyl.
Yeah. There's like an old Ferris wheel that's broken down. Looks really creepy.
There is a Ferris wheel in Chernobyl.
Oh, is there?
So that's, it's a famous landmark in the actual exclusion zone. And so I was like, wait a minute.
Wow.
But amazing.
That's cool.
How did they happen to find a town that looks so similar that also had a broken down Ferris wheel?
I don't know. And I think maybe there was some digital compositing going on, like especially when you see the plant in the distance and stuff like that. But very well done. Location's great, and all the like ruin porn type stuff that you see throughout the movie. That's the reason to watch this movie.
Yeah. So, would you view it, cue it, or screw it, Chris?
Well, let's talk about the story, I guess, or where do we even go from there?
Well, so Yuri packs him up in his van, and he apparently has a normal route that he usually takes to get into the city, and there's a checkpoint. They're told that there's some kind of maintenance going on in the city, in the exclusion zone, so they have to turn around and find their own back way in.
Which I think that's there to present that this is a place that's like controlled access, but the guards don't know they're there.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously you can't just drive into Chernobyl in real life. I don't think you can.
One does not simply drive into Chernobyl.
Right. But also, if they went through the gates, then the guards would be like, hey, those guys are still out here. Where are they? And then they would find them. Because they get stranded. Surprise, surprise.
Well, when they say that there's maintenance going on, that kind of gives you a clue that there's something else beyond the border there. Ooh. At least that's the way I felt about it. Ooh. Like there's experiments going on or something in there.
In hindsight, after seeing the whole movie and thinking back about that, maybe that's what they were going for. Maybe this movie's better than I thought.
Does it really make it that much better for you?
No.
Okay. Good.
Man, Yuri is another MVP of this movie. I loved Yuri. That character felt lived in to me. Unlike, and maybe it was just by comparison to the other characters who all these young kids who are like running around Chernobyl screaming and whatever seem generic as fuck. Like, I mean, there's nothing distinct about them other than a couple of little sort of narrative details. Like, you don't really know much about their personalities. I guess the two main dudes kind of have distinct personalities, but they're very generic. Yuri felt like a real fucking guy to me, and he seemed like a badass.
He's seen some shit. He's ex-military.
Like, I would actually trust that guy. I would get in his van and go to Chernobyl with him.
For sure. And he seemed to me like we've traveled internationally, and I feel like I've met people like that, where it's like, I don't know what the hell's going on. This is all sketchy to me, but this guy seems like he knows his shit. Yeah. And if we follow him, we're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
That makes it even more upsetting when things go wrong and he doesn't really know how to resolve the problem.
Yeah. And you knew, I mean, mild spoilers, you knew he wasn't going to last long because we felt so fucking safe when he was around.
Yeah. He gets mauled by fucking something early on.
So, yeah, I don't know. They get stranded in Chernobyl after they go on some sightseeing. It takes them a long time to kind of, for the horror to kind of start to happen.
I know, like, pretty soon after they get there, we see that mutant fish. His mouth pops open when they poke
That was fucking awesome. That was setting me up for some shit that this movie didn't really get into.
I thought it was going to be like a Blood Glacier movie.
Yeah.
I thought,
or like Zombies, which I'm never going to get to see. I thought this was going to finally give me the Zombies experience that I've craved the entire time that I've been doing this podcast.
You can probably rent that on Amazon, Patrick, if you really want to see it. I'll buy you a DVD for Christmas.
Guys, I'll be back in an hour and a half.
But yeah, this isn't really a creature feature. I really thought it was going to be, because when I think Chernobyl, I think mutant creatures. Duh.
They're creatures. I mean...
Yeah, but
they're vague and humanoid. It reminded me a little bit of I Am Legend toward the end.
Yeah, they're just like zombies. They're just more fucking zombies.
Yeah, we never really get like a close look at them. Like, they seem to be malformed. They're like bald and pale, but...
There's a lot of stuff.
Not very compelling.
There's a lot of stuff with animals that really seems to set us up for some kind of mutant animal thing. Because there's the weird mutant fish that we see at the edge of the lake. Later, we see a horribly decayed dead dog on the front step of a building.
A dog that doesn't quite look right.
Right, he doesn't quite look right. There's a bear, which is one of the most mind-boggling scenes in this movie. And there are also actual dogs that repeatedly chase them, but when you first see the dogs, there's some question about if they're normal dogs or not. Later on, they just turn out to be normal dogs. They're like, I don't know, hungry.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sets you up to think there's something more interesting going on with like maybe mutant animals or nature out of control or something. But basically in the end, the threat ends up being bald zombies.
I guess. Basically the movie, once we are done with the tourism, which I was still very much on board with the movie through the tourism, it becomes characters they're hiding in a car for a long period of time, and then they spend a lot of time walking around looking for whoever the latest missing member of their party is, and there's vague, growly shit chasing them, and they have a flashlight sometimes. And
it's very boring.
It's very boring. It's the most boring creature feature you can imagine.
Yeah, there are so many scenes. I mean, I commented out loud while watching this movie. There's like 5-10 minute sequences that are just the characters blindly walking around and us waiting for a jump scare that half the time doesn't even arrive.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time. I can't think of a jump scare.
I can think of a jump scare right now. This is one of the most boggling and annoying moments in this movie to me, is when, you guys remember when they go into that parking lot full of vehicles while they're trying to find a car to get out of the fucking area, right, because their car is broken down. And they get on board this bus, and I'm still not even sure why there's this whole thing with them getting on board this dilapidated bus, because nothing comes of that in the end. But they get on this bus that's been riddled with bullet holes from the inside, perplexingly, and that's also never really further explained. But there's a kind of a sheet hanging at the front of the bus, I think, as you go into like the driver's area. And so the character like slowly reaches out and opens this sheet, and you're getting built up for something weird being behind the sheet.
It's that like classic, like he's going to reach his hand out extremely slowly and the camera's going to follow his hand.
Yeah.
Which I hate that.
And then there turns out to be nothing behind the sheet. And there's kind of a moment where it's just like, oh, okay. And then there's a jump scare with just like dust falling down from the ceiling or something. It's like, but it's just dust.
Yes.
Like there's nothing. I'm like, okay, so you set me up for the scare that wasn't there, and then you gave me a jump scare after that was absolutely nothing. There was like zero substance to the jump scare.
No, I wish this movie had a little more confidence in the fright of the atmosphere, because I don't want to talk about The Last of Us again, but we're kind of, in that department where seeing this bus that apparently had like guards and soldiers on it at one point, we've already lost Yuri. So they're like, we got to get to the guards. They're going to save us. And then so you see a bus that had guards on it and they all got fucked up by something. Now we know the guards can't save you either. And that's a good way to like raise the stakes. It's a little unsettling to see all that.
So that was the point of the bus scene.
I can only assume that was the point.
Okay.
But yeah.
But still, it was like a public transit bus. It wasn't like an armored vehicle. It was like a city bus.
Sure. But it was, I don't know, who knows? Maybe they went there for refuge. But it worked for me. But like my mind was coming up with the horror. And I don't need like some stupid like thing to fall out of the drop ceiling on a bus or something.
Well, the worst thing about that is they don't discover anything in that little isolated area either. No. They do see fresh blood on the window, which also is never explained.
They don't discover anything in this whole movie.
That's true. They don't even find themselves.
Yeah.
Which is what we all go to Europe for, right?
Well, it's a good way to make me, you mentioned, I think, Jurassic Park. This movie reminded me of Jurassic Park before you said that. Like, you have this little motley crew of people. They go into this, like, secluded place where there's creatures about, and they're like confined in a car. It's very easy to make the comparison to several of the Jurassic Park movies when they're in a car and there's things outside menacing them.
And with the Ferris wheel, it's got sort of the amusement park aesthetic to it as well, a little bit.
Right. But the characters are not there. Like, imagine Jurassic Park, but all the characters are just like screaming college kids. It would be shitty. Now, Jurassic Park wouldn't even be good if you did that. I wish the movie had tried harder on its characters, had more confidence in its atmosphere, and have some quiet moments. Have some moments where, like, when the character goes missing and the other characters they're having an argument about, should we leave, go back to the guard station? No, we can't leave our friend behind. Like, you can have that conversation and make it interesting without just having them like screaming at each other for 5 minutes while the camera's like shaking around.
What it needed was like more. I wish there was more conflict built into these relationships that. Like, I can't even think of an example of a movie that does this well, but if these characters, like, the sort of the fright that they're feeling and the threats around them sort of force them to come to terms with, like, grudges they might have had with each other.
You're thinking of The Ritual.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of The Ritual.
Our favorite movie of 2018.
Well, let's not jump the gun.
Lying.
I mean, and the few opportunities for some sort of interesting character development or character interaction are squandered in really strange ways too. I mean, this one, what's the character's name? Is it Paul who's going to propose to his girlfriend?
Chris.
That's Chris. Okay.
Paul is the brother.
Okay. Chris reveals early on to his brother that he's planning to propose to his girlfriend when they're in Moscow. He ends up getting wounded when Yuri also gets killed and is kind of sidelined on this broken down car for a while. He gets left behind there with his girlfriend. And the rest of the gang goes off to try and find something to fix the car. When they come back, both of them are gone. And the resolution to that story and those two characters is basically all just told through her cell phone footage of him like tearfully like handing her the engagement ring and trying to propose to her and her turning him down. Which, I mean, I guess is developing that thread, but it's so weirdly presented just through a cell phone. You can't really see her you don't see her reaction at all, and then it's just, summarily disposed of, and we move on to the next thing. It's very strange.
Well, it's a big who cares anyway. Like those characters hadn't been set up in such a way that I was really looking forward to the proposal.
Yeah, I mean, their sole, between the two of them, the only interesting character traits were his. Actually, she had no interesting character traits, and his only character traits were he was going to propose and he didn't want to go to Chernobyl.
You got some stuff here. You got some stuff set up early when the movie was still working really well for me in the first 20 or 30 minutes. You got some stuff that that had some potential. You have Chris, who wants to propose to his girlfriend in Moscow. His brother, and he's like a beta guy, not to oversimplify him or use that term really, but he's kind of the well, how do you describe him?
There is no way to describe him other than he's going to propose to his girlfriend. He doesn't want to go to Chernobyl.
I don't know anything about these characters except for how they're related to each other and that one of them is going to propose.
I couldn't even call him.
No, you can define him at least by contrast to his brother, because his brother Paul is the native in Ukraine, or he moved there a while ago, and he is like, one of the guys who's like, he's like the Irishman in Backcountry. We're talking about a lot of movies we've seen on this episode. But he's, overconfident. He's like, thinks he's a ladies' man, all that stuff. And he's a sharp contrast to Chris, who's very timid and wants to stick to the plan. And he's kind of a tight ass. Then you have kind of a dynamic between Paul and the one girl, where Paul was hitting on the one girl and she's like, I'm not into it, but you think maybe she is into it or whatever. And that's kind of creating more conflict with Chris because...
Who is that girl, by the way?
Speaking of which, yeah, that might as well be her fucking name.
How is she related? Is she just a friend?
She's a friend of the would-be fiance.
Of Greta Gerwig.
Yeah. The poor man's Greta Gerwig. But, and then they go on the tourism, and there's a couple random hippies who are backpackers that join them. And so now you got something where it's we got the four of us who all know each other, and then these two people we don't fucking know just came on our trip.
And those people just turn out to be fucking cannon fodder,
Right. So
especially the girl. I mean, she serves almost no purpose whatsoever except to look worried.
She has top billing in this movie in the credits.
What?
Yeah,
the backpacker.
The backpacker girl?
Yeah, Zoe. I don't know. Maybe it was alphabetical by name of the cast or something. I don't know. But there's character threads that could have been played with and pulled a little bit, but they don't. Once the shit hits the fan, they're all cannon fodder.
Right. The movie's not interested in those threads, but it's also not interested in the creature feature aspect either. It's just totally baffling.
It's like they want to show you as little as they can to make it scary, like the Alien or whatever, but they don't show us enough to where we want to see more or where it's scary. It's just there's something there. Don't know what it is.
Is there a sequel to this? I feel like there's got to be a sequel.
I don't know.
I hope not.
Okay.
I mean, we're being very negative about it, but it's by far not the worst thing we've seen. It entertained me more than a lot of shit we've watched.
It's more competently made than I would have expected.
It looked better.
It's got a good look. The cinematography is really not that bad either.
Not bad. I wouldn't say there's a lot of craft to the movie, but at least it's very interesting and the locations and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting something that felt like it was made while the director was on vacation. There definitely was some thought and a little bit of craft put into it.
Yeah, it's not necessarily offensive. It's not offensive. It's fairly lazy and fairly lifeless for most of it. There's not a ton to recommend it. There's not a ton to really condemn it for, but there's not a lot to recommend it for either.
Well, I try not to compare these movies to the movies I would have made, but Chernobyl Diaries...
We say this every episode.
So, Pizza Face Killer in Space, are you going to draw parallels?
But there's things I want to see in a movie called Chernobyl Diaries. And
what are they? Tell me.
Well, I want to see some mutant creatures. Sure. I want to see some ruin porn. The thing is, I don't feel like I got enough mutant creatures. I got the mutant fish, which was like the highlight at the very beginning, and then the creatures were just not doing it for me.
You got stoked when you saw that fish, and I got extra stoked.
I was like this is the movie I want to see. I was like, they're going the direction I want them to.
You were like cackling over
I even said out loud before they entered the exclusion zone, I said, this movie's got a lot of potential right now. I'm loving everything they've set up.
Yeah.
Don't disappoint me.
The first half hour is promising.
I was dreaming of a climax where Chris and Yuri have to venture into like the monster's nest to retrieve the wedding ring.
Oh
my God!
Yes.
Much, much, much better movie.
Something like
That's
that.
a View It with prejudice.
And the fiance to be has been like wounded. She's laid up in the fucking van, or maybe she has to go in with Yuri while he's laid up in the van. I don't know. That's great though.
Just something that's a little bit more fun and just making the best of the concept. This has great scenery. The scenery is as good as you could want in a Chernobyl movie. Nothing else lives up to the promise of the Chernobyl Diaries title.
Yeah, why not have a dramatic return of Yuri? Like, you think Yuri's dead, and then Yuri, like, fucking staggers out of the woods at the end. He's made, like, a makeshift crutch for himself, and he's still a badass and beats up monsters.
Or he's a zombie. He's a mutant now, and he's just as badass.
Sure.
He's got a gun coming out of his face.
Oh man, yeah. See, this is a great idea for a movie.
I like Blood Glacier would have done a better job in Chernobyl. Give the guys who made Blood Glacier this set.
Yeah. Guys, let's make the Fermi Diaries. Take all these ideas.
The Fermi Diaries.
Fermi is the nuclear plant in the town where we all grew up. For you listeners out there who aren't familiar with Monroe, Michigan.
Yep. I've never played it, but I've heard nothing but good things about the video game Stalker: Shadow of Chernobyl.
Oh, me too. And I love the film it's based on.
It's apparently a great RPG about going and scavenging in Chernobyl, and there's lots of mutants, and it's very scary. I've never played it. My former roommate did. Looked great.
Is it like a video game of Stalker?
Yeah, kind of. You're like, it sounds like you're sort of like trying to navigate through the zone, and like you find weird alien objects and have to avoid mines and stuff like that.
Wow.
I was relieved in this movie, though, that I was afraid for a minute that this movie was the real threat was going to be like other humans and like just like it was going to be normal Eastern Europeans fucking people up like Hostile or something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, at first, for a brief moment when we're going to meet Yuri, I thought that Yuri himself might
sell him out to some human traffickers.
I was glad he didn't.
Right. No, Yuri is a stand-up man. I don't know if there's much more we can say about this movie without going to the spoiler realm.
There's not much to say about this movie in general.
Exactly, even in the spoiler room.
It's sad. You get the idea, though. It's the scenery's great. Story's not. I'll say screw it. I wanted to give it a cue it, but once we got to the halfway point of this movie, it became interminable. So I'll say screw it.
I totally second that. I was kind of leaning towards a cue it for a while. I was like, this isn't so bad, but it just got just really dull and just failed to deliver on any of the hopes I had for the first, maybe first act of it.
Too much of its running time is just people walking around in the dark saying each other's names.
Yeah.
And you can't even appreciate the scenery in those parts because it's all in the fucking dark. I was afraid of the dark, not because the monsters come out at night, but because I can't look at the cool buildings at night.
And that scared you?
I didn't. I wanted the sun to come out so I could appreciate the ruin porn.
Well, you just said you were afraid. But...
Speaking of walking around in the dark, saying other people's names, Steven?
Yeah, screw it. I mean, Chris mentioned earlier that this film wasn't fun. Even the characters don't seem to be having fun. When they're joking with each other, they don't even laugh. I mean, this movie's a total slog. I like the ruin porn. I think I want to go check out that Motorcycle Girls blog, maybe instead.
Okay, I could give you the name of the blog. I've just looked it up, but it's easier to find if you just Google Chernobyl motorcycle girl. And her blog, her like Angel Fire page is the first result. And then you can see some other articles about the accuracy of her comments and things like that. It sounds like everything she's reporting from Chernobyl is true, but the circumstances of how and why she went to Chernobyl were embellished. But that's fine with me. I'm there to see the buildings. I'm not there to, get invested in her personal journey. So check that out. Better waste of your time than this movie.
Agreed.
So with that, go read the blog, and we're going to go down to the spoiler room, talk about the more specific plot points of this movie and how we felt about them. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Every Horror Movie on Netflix. We're down in the spoiler room, taking our iodine, checking our Geiger counter, making sure the furnace isn't leaking dangerous radioactive asbestos.
Checking out some weird
radioactive asbestos. That's a hell of a combination.
It doesn't look good right now, but you know what? If we stay down here for less than 2 hours, we will survive, I think.
Yeah. There is a weird, armless, legless mutant bald creature in the corner that we're kind of trying to figure out what's up with that.
Oh, that's just Ricky.
Oh.
Hi, Ricky. So, yeah.
Yeah, so you obviously remember the armless, legless thing from this movie.
Yeah.
We see it so briefly that I wasn't sure whether or not it had arms or legs.
Yeah.
I wanted more of that.
Me too.
More weird, fucked up creatures.
Otherwise, again, they're all just bald zombies in fucking black smocks. There's nothing. Yeah.
I've never been.
There's nothing.
I'm still just a little baffled by all this.
It's just baffling to me how I could be so unintrigued by monsters that I see so fleetingly.
By nuclear waste monsters. How do you make monsters created by a fucking nuclear meltdown so uninteresting?
They're doing the right things. They're showing us, not too much, but I just didn't care.
Yeah, except it feels like they're showing us not too much because they don't really have either the budget or the fucking willpower or the imagination to come up with something.
Yeah, they didn't have a unique design. There's nothing really to look at. I said I wanted to see more of that kind of thing, but I didn't want to see more of what was presented on screen. I wish they had actually devised some interesting creatures for this.
You could Google image search Chernobyl animals and have way more goosebumps than any of this stuff. I wish that some of the monster design had been inspired on real life. We could talk about the X-Files. We could talk about the Host. We could talk about the Fluke Man, which was inspired by Chernobyl.
Was it?
Yeah. But we're talking about fucking two-headed fucking animals, two-headed births, two-headed dogs and donkeys and fucking, horrifying shit,
Even that mutant fish at the beginning didn't really look all that mutated. I don't know that isn't an actual type of fish.
It was albino and it had fucking fangs, so that was enough for me.
Yeah, it was creepy, but it still wasn't very imaginatively designed.
No. But it was still weird enough where I was like, all right, I'd fucking push whatever little pleasure center in my brain,
that loves mutant fish.
Yeah.
Chernobyl is kind of interesting because it's kind of like a real life fairy tale zone. I just Googled Chernobyl animals, but I'm looking at this and 90% of these could be Photoshop. I don't know. Because Chernobyl is kind of in our consciousness as a place where anything is possible,
Your wildest dreams can come true.
Yeah, right? You're making it sound
like Disneyland.
So much dreamier than reality, I think.
Well, yeah, it's bleak, but it's we don't know. It's a place of mystery, and we don't,
I see what you mean.
And people's lives were ruined there.
Sure. Your mind can conjure limitless horrors just from hearing the word Chernobyl, right? I get what you mean.
It could be true.
Right.
And it's kind of like we know pretty much everywhere else you can go in the world. We kind of know what's out there.
And so it's like, come on, man, give me something better than a fucking bald zombie.
Right. That's really interesting to me. It's kind of like just the fact that there's so much mystery around Chernobyl in our consciousness about what you might find there. And it's within the realm of possibility. That's fascinating. Good stuff for a horror movie.
Not this one, though.
Very squandered. That's what's frustrating about this.
Yep.
So I guess, if we're talking spoilers, I really don't know even what to spoil because there aren't
everybody
many
dies.
twists. Everybody dies. You could predict that. The one girl becomes our final girl, and she...
Oh, we should talk about the fucking hilarious shit that leads to her becoming the final girl. Yeah. Her and fucking...
Paul, the bro.
Who is the one who lives in Kiev and speaks Russian. We have seen him speak Russian multiple times during this movie.
Yes, hold on.
Prior to that.
Well, prior to what you're about to talk about.
Yeah.
They are walking through the dark, looking for all their friends who are dead. It goes on way too long. They're chased by things. They walk through the dark. They're chased. They walk through the dark. They walk through tunnels. Boring as hell. They emerge from a tunnel and realize that they're in, like, the reactor of the Chernobyl plant. Now, the actual compromised reactor of the Chernobyl plant is so fucked that you get, like, instantly killed if you go into it. Like, they've dropped concrete on it from a helicopter to, like, contain it, and it's, like, due to pop open again, so they got to put more concrete on it. But, like, that thing, the ground zero of the Chernobyl reactor is going to, like, outlast all of human history and, like, how fatal it's going to be to, like, walk in the room. But they're, like, in the control room, and they're like, oh, my face is burning a little bit, and they get, like, some blisters and stuff. I feel like by the time you're getting blisters on your face, you're fucking, like, dead. But I don't know. Maybe not. Anyway.
And they're exhausted. They just keep going aimlessly at a certain point. What's the guy's name again?
Paul.
Paul's eyes are basically swollen shut.
Yeah.
They wind up being confronted by some armed officers.
Right. And that's what Patrick was about to get to. They emerge from the plant and they see, the guards or the soldiers, whatever, are there to save them, hopefully.
Yeah. And the guards are yelling at them in Russian. They have their guns up because obviously they don't know what the deal is with these two people. And they're yelling at them in Russian to stop, don't move any further. And Paul, who knows how to speak Russian, continues to walk and ends up getting fucking shot. Like, this scene would make sense if he was one of the people who didn't speak Russian and,
right,
tragically happened to not understand the directions he was given. But for some reason, the one character who does have a sensible reason to listen and heed these directions gets shot for not listening and heeding directions.
Well, I mentioned his eyes were swollen shut. Do you think he could see them?
No, I don't think so. But still, if he heard them telling him to stop, you would think, it's an auditory cue and he would stop.
Well, even regardless of that, when you see a bunch of armed officers pointing guns at you, you don't keep walking toward them until they put the guns down.
No.
Right.
No.
Even if he didn't speak Russian, this makes no sense.
No, that's why if the police ever point a gun at me, I don't care what they tell me to do, I'm just going to not move. That's a tangent.
It's a brief tangent, though.
But, Well, the weird thing is there's lots of Russian spoken in this movie. None of it has subtitles. We just have the Russian-speaking characters talking to each other, and that's fine. We can tell from the context what they're saying, and it's fine. We don't need to know what they're saying. We get the point of the story. When the guard says, stop, don't come any closer, that's the first time you see subtitles on the Russian.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, okay, and that makes total sense. Yeah, it's a language barrier. This guy's going to get shot. And then, like, his body hits the pavement. We're watching together, and Patrick's like, wait a minute, that's the only guy in the group that speaks Russian. I'm like, yes, that makes no sense. No sense.
So then his bae ends up getting carted away into the Russian facility.
Yeah, the final girl gets taken to an asylum, and they're like, oh, she's seen the escaped patients. We can't let her out. And they throw her in, like, a cell with, like, 100 patients, and
they crowd around her, and boom, the end.
That's the end. It was not good.
No.
I wanted the ending to be, like, 2 or 3 of them survive and make it home, and once they're home and safe, they start mutating because they got too much radiation.
Their hair starts falling out. They start turning into bald zombies.
Or just one of them. Like, they're all like, they're chilling. Oh, look at these cute pictures. Oh, I'm going to put it on my Insta, blah, blah, blah. And then, like, Paul comes out of the bathroom and his, like, eyes falling out. And there's, like, a fish face behind the eye.
Yeah, dude, that'd be fucking sick.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Like, it's just so easy to make this better.
Again, save it for the Fermi Diaries. Let's write this shit.
Yeah.
It's easy to say you could have done better, but I'll give some respect.
It also would have been easy to do better.
I don't want to disrespect the filmmakers too bad, but I mean, they probably put most of their creative energies into securing the permits to film in all these locations.
Well, here's another mind-boggling thing, is it took 3 people to write this. There are 3 credited writers.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
One guy was like, hey, I got this great, it's a character drama. It's about like a guy who wants to propose to his girlfriend in Moscow, but his brother wants to take him to Chernobyl. And the other guy's like, oh, I have a script about rabid dogs. And then the third person's like, what about just like some fucked up mutants who like just like take you, man?
Yep.
They all got their 50 pages.
Yep. All right. Well, great. What are we doing next time?
Next, we have a little special holiday treat for our most loyal listeners. And
our disloyal ones.
Yeah, it doesn't. If you listen, you listen. Next week, so not in 2 weeks, but next week, we're going to have a little special episode, a little short episode. We're going to talk about the year in review, 2018. It's the end of the year. What did we watch? What did we like? Have we seen any cool horror things outside of our little Netflix journey? So you can join us for that. Bring some eggnog over. We'll be talking about the year of 2018. Was it good to you? And was it good to us? Then after that, we're going to be watching John Carpenter's Christine. I'm very excited.
I'm all revved up for that one.
I won't tip my hand to how I feel about that movie, but I'll be watching it again, getting ready to discuss it on the show.
I think it's fair to say we're all pretty excited, and we've all seen. This is kind of the rare movie that we've all seen before.
Yeah, we're gonna have to try to get a guest.
I think we're working on getting
a
newbie
for that newbie perspective. I'm too much of a John Carpenter fanboy to be objective. In fact, I should recuse myself from that episode.
Do we know any automobile experts?
Do I look like a guy who knows any automobile experts?
You might know someone who's an enthusiast. I don't know. People are nerds about cars.
Someone who can really tell us how scientifically accurate Christine is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure.
Could a car really do that?
we should have an expert on every show, you know? Instead of me like reading Wikipedia on the show trying to tell you something about Chernobyl.
Dude, if only we could have Christine herself on as a guest.
Yeah.
Be like, well, Christine, would you view it, cue it, or screw it?
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll see you guys next week. We're going to be doing our special episode I just mentioned. Stay tuned for that. Until then, keep an eye on your Geiger counter. Make sure you don't burn your face off standing too close to that microwave or to the exclusion zone. For every horror movie on Netflix, I'm Chris.
I'm Patrick.
I'm Steven.
See you next week.